Hey, how's it going? It's Keith Townsend from the CTOadvisor.com and another CTO dose from VMworld 2018. We're in the beautiful CTO Advisor temporary studio in the Delano it's actually called, Craig.
I was wondering about that.
Yeah, you told me that
Delano.
you have to dedicate 2 hours of learning a week, and that's at least a half an hour of my learning for the week is that it's pronounced Delano at the Roosevelt Delano.
And I actually said 2 hours of learning a day, but yeah.
Oh, a day?
Yeah, a day.
Oh
yeah.
my God.
Yeah, if you want to keep up with all this stuff.
Oh my
I know,
goodness.
it's too much.
So, Craig Fletcher, you're, wait, did you get a promotion recently?
Oh, are we going to talk about that?
Yeah, I got it. Craig doesn't like, he doesn't like the whole Me Too thing. I have to drag him into this. But Director of Solutions Architecture at VMware.
At VMware.
Specifically, what region of the U.S.? Or no, not just the U.S.
Western
all of Canada?
U.S. Yeah, Canada, Western U.S., Latin America.
All right.
Yep, yeah, that happened recently. I'm very grateful for that.
So Craig is also responsible. You got to wear it and own it for getting me in the door at VMware. He sent me a note on LinkedIn saying, "Hey Keith, you want to come work for VMware?" I initially said no, and then he kept bugging me, and now I'm at VMware. So all of the CTO Advisor fans have Craig to thank for me being at VMware.
Actually, the content that you create on CTO Advisor through your podcast and your video blog is what motivated me to reach out to you because I think it's great content. And as I told you, I love your radio voice. It helps me fall asleep at night too.
So Craig, I got you on because you had a session, you and Joseph Griffin, a solutions architect down in Texas, right? He's in
Dallas now.
He's in Dallas now.
Yeah.
You guys had this fascinating session at VMworld on digital transformation powered basically by culture change.
Right.
And I wanted to capture some excerpts and some thoughts around the ideal that you need cultural change needs to be part what I got from the content, the session, that cultural change has to be deliberate and has to be part of your strategy of digital transformation. So one of the things that I kind of was curious about, people say that the culture comes from the top down. What type of buy-in do you need? What type of buy-in and from whom do you need buy-in to implement cultural change versus technical change?
Yeah, that's a great question. You hope when you go through a cultural transformation that it's going to come from the top. So you want a very active leader in cultural transformation, ideally. And I wouldn't say that's required. So for folks in your audience, it might be a VP or director of departments. If it's not coming from your CEO down, really,
right,
or your CIO down in IT, you can still do it within your team. But the buy-in would be, the source of the buy-in, I think, would be the agreement, first of all, and the understanding that technology is not holding people back from digital transformation, which should be a business-driven first initiative, by the way. That the technology can do these things. They can help companies go faster and be more agile. The surveys will tell you, the customers I speak with, we do multi-customer events, we pass the microphone around and ask them, what's keeping you from transforming and being that agile, nimble, front office, revenue-generating IT group? And it's almost unanimous. They say that it's culture. So if you don't have the buy-in, I think it just could be a lack of understanding of what's holding us back. But I think once people come to that understanding, they realize that all the technological investments in the world won't yield that transformational change without changing the way that people think and behave, which is really what culture is. It's the normative thoughts, beliefs, and behaviors of the people in your organization.
So culture change is disruptive. Looking from the ground up, if I saw my culture changing as a frontline employee, I automatically get worried.
Yeah.
Like as humans, we don't like change.
Right.
And when we're seeing, the fundamental culture of my department or my company changing, we have this desire not to trust it.
Yeah.
How do we get buy-in not just at that high level, but at that ground level, that this change is beneficial and not necessarily adversarial?
That's a good question. I do think that it's hard to put culture change into action and to motivate people beyond their fear of change. Because if you just talk about culture change, people, not only do they fear it, but they don't understand it, and they just hope that conversation is going to go away. So I think, and I'm generalizing, of course, you're always going to have your champions, which, by the way, is part of the answer to your question, I think, is you start with your champions. So I think of some of the things you want to do, I think you want to change people's, in a corporate environment anyway, you want to change people's performance metrics, first of all. You want them to be measured on cultural change aspects of how their job is making a difference. And I think you also, big bang doesn't work for culture change. I think if I were to emphasize maybe one thing on this, in this conversation, though, is you have to be very intentional about culture change. You know, IT organizations have long lists of 100+ projects that they'd like to do, they'd like the business to do. And we all know that, and I'm a former real life CTO as well, so I've been through this. You take this long list of projects, you can only do about this many of these projects. You know, you have to prioritize. If culture change isn't at the top of that list, it's always going to move to be next year's thing. You know, it just always gets deferred unless you have intentionality. But once you have intentionality, I think you want to start with some growth mindset people in your organization, and you want to focus on maybe a hairy business problem that hasn't been solved yet and you believe technology can solve it. You want to sign up for that, which takes courage, and then the behaviors around culture change are going to drive that to be successful. You want to celebrate those publicly to show people, hey, this works, we're rewarding these people, and motivate them to change by giving them an example.
So, two things that I heard out of that. One is that you have to make an investment in cultural change. If you've ever done like portfolio or project management, you realize that sometimes you have to hit the pause on the most, all but the most critical projects. And ironically, a lot of times we don't even know what the most critical projects are.
Right.
And that's the whole point of portfolio management. And once we've made that investment in portfolio management, we can prioritize our projects. Same way with cultural change. Yeah. You can't undertake a lot of these technology projects. One of my favorite conversations was with Kelsey Hightower, who works at Google, and he's a developer advocate, and we were talking about Kubernetes. He said, Keith, you know what, to your point, the technology isn't hard. What we do isn't brain surgery. This is, someone's already written the code. Someone's already figured out the memory management systems, the queue management. All that stuff has been written for us. We have to just implement it. To his point, CI/CD isn't hard. Take 2 weeks, decide on a tool, deploy it in another 2 or 3 weeks. If you can't deploy it, and if you can't deploy the CI/CD technology in a couple of weeks, then your problem is way deeper than the technology.
Right.
And
technology works.
Technology works. It's this cultural shift. So the question behind that, and I challenged Kelsey Hightower with the same question, was what happens when you get people, because you talked about it at the session. There's some people that just won't change. Like, I'm a DNS administrator.
Yeah.
And you're asking me to do Pivotal Cloud Foundry. You're not understanding. I'm a DNS administrator. I've done this for the past 20 years. And I know DNS backwards and forwards. What you're asking me to do is not my job.
Yeah, so I don't think, I like to use networking as an example as well. Do we think that the network of the last 20 years is going to be the network of the next 20 years? I would say no, right? We want a software-defined automated construct, for example. But people resist that. It's very, very different. I think that in a more general sense, zooming out from that particular example, there will still be jobs in enterprise IT for people who don't want to change, but I don't think they're going to last forever. So I think people that won't change, they want to do things the legacy way with legacy systems and tools. They can keep those legacy, quote unquote, mainframe type systems up and running.
Right.
But I don't think that's going to last forever. And I think eventually you have to make some hard decisions within yourself. Am I going to believe that I have more potential? And then if I believe that I have more potential than what I've been doing the last 20 years, am I going to take massive action on that belief? Because if you don't have that belief, first of all, you're going to get paralyzed. But if you do have that belief, if something can come along and inject that into you, you can find it within yourself, then you're going to get better results, and then your belief's going to change and say, I can learn things the new way. If you can't do that, and if we can't do that as enterprise IT practitioners, I think leadership might have to separate with cultural mismatches over time, which is harsh to say, but I'm trying to keep it real.
Yeah, I'm a bit more direct than you are. Some hard decisions.
Trying to be nice.
Yeah, some hard decisions have to be made. Both on both ends. What you described is on the frontline employee perspective on is basically that growth mindset.
Yeah.
That I'm not limited by my current capability. That I can grow into a much larger role. I can learn things that were perceived to be, some people look at, like shooting video. If you looked at some of my earlier video, you're like, Keith, you should probably find something else to do as a hobby.
Well, you're dressed a lot nicer too. You got your T-shirts.
I normally wear my T-shirts on the other videos.
Yeah.
But the ability to basically, I like call it the grit method, the grit, the show grit. That I can get this.
Yeah.
Anecdotally, I started mentoring a guy the other last week. He was telling me, Keith, I went back to school and I interned and for a year, and I got a job in doing some embedded systems. I'm in embedded systems. He labeled himself an embedded systems programmer.
Yeah.
And I said, wow, that's really interesting. That's really compelling. And he said, yeah, I'm 59. And I'm thinking, wait, hold on. So I walked back. So you're interning at the age 54. He went back to school at, let's say, 52, 53.
Yeah.
Got his degree, interned for a year, and now when he describes his job to me, he's doing IoT. I said, one, you've mislabeled yourself.
Yeah.
You're doing IoT. You're not doing embedded systems.
Yeah.
And I put him on the path to investigate technologies like Leonardo and Greengrass and such. But that was I'm like, I wish I could take what you just said, bottle it up, and sell it to everyone, because that's the growth mindset. And if he can do it, then our teams can definitely do it.
Yeah, and I think this sort of coaching, I think one thing that's a great story, by the way. We need more people like that.
Yeah.
I think one thing that might be missing a lot in IT leadership is investing in your people. Mm-hmm. Too. And we think so much about business alignment, and business outcome alignment is part of digital transformation, but in the technological aspects, technology capabilities, but we really need to, especially with the talent wars, we need to focus investment on developing our people and being very intentional about some of the soft skills and psychological aspects of taking that career to the next level. Growth mindset cannot be overemphasized, in my opinion. The opposite of that, the fixed mindset, believes that they have a certain IQ that they're born with, and it's not going to change. Mm-hmm. And so they're afraid to raise their hand and be wrong about something, or show that curiosity, which is where learning comes from. They don't want anybody to know that they don't know everything, so they stay with their expertise, and they see challenges as obstacles. And they just don't want to reveal any weaknesses, where this growth mindset says, you know what, there's way too much to know out there, especially with the industry changing. I'm going to raise my hand in class, so to speak. I'm going to ask those questions that lead me down new paths and new answers, and I'm not afraid to be wrong. It's an opportunity towards mastery. And, the path to autonomy in our careers comes from first the desire, right, and then just practicing, asking questions, and then eventually you lead to mastery. But a fixed mindset says, I'm born with these skill sets and this is it for me. It's not going to work.
All right. So, Craig, for those that weren't able to attend your session and want to hear it on playback on VMworld, what was the session?
It was called Culture, the heavy lifting behind digital transformation. I don't have the actual session code, but
if they search
it's on the
for that
website.
or your name, that
Joseph
was,
Griffiths and myself.
That was the quote unquote only session you
that I
given
did.
the
Yeah,
game.
easy to find.
You literally worked on it for a couple of months, so I'm really impressed with that.
Yeah.
I usually start mine the day before. All right.
That's because I'm not as smart as you.
You can find these videos on the web, ctodose.com. Talk to you next, CTO Advisor Daily Dose.